When was the last time you and your spouse truly connected? Not just past each other in the hallway, but really connected heart to heart. Today we're talking about keeping the spark alive in your marriage, because intimacy doesn't just happen, it takes intentionality. Let's dive in. Welcome to Bringing Hope Home. We're Bryce and Colette Schaffer, and we're on a mission to bring God's hope, healing, and practical strategies right into your living room. Welcome back to Bringing Hope Home. And for another month here in November, the month of being thankful. So today we're going to talk about intimacy in marriage. And, you know, this is one of the things that I think people, it's an issue, but we don't talk a lot about it.
Right. Not in this context, I don't think. And it's kind of one of those hidden thoughts and processes that all married couples go through. So it's nothing that is not the same. You know, everybody has to go through this if you've been married for any length of time. And those that aren't married for a length of time, probably they got, into that rut pretty quick or at some point and then couldn't get out of it. So we want to certainly come to you today and help you try to get out of that loss of your spark for one another. You know, one of the things I do in our marriage enrichment, that before we have somebody come in for a marriage ceremony, is I ask them to list the 5 reasons that they fell in love, right? And when they write those down, I say, keep that handy. Keep it somewhere where you're going to look at it, your wedding album or something. Because when you do, you're going to want to come back to it to look and say, why did I fall in love with that person? And, I don't ask them to share all but one of, 4 of them out of those 5, because sometimes it can be a little sensitive and intimate. But I want them to realize that this is why you're deciding to marry each other. And you're going to have to come back to that, to rekindle that spark, for sure.
Yeah, because life happens as you're going through marriage. You have your jobs, you have the kids and all of their schedules. We've seen it over and over where people our age, you get through having kids and you get to the other side and there isn't much intimacy left because all the energy was to the kids and everything else and jobs and taking care of parents. And there's just so much that we have to do that sometimes our physical affection can decline.
Right.
And they joke about it in TV shows and different things like that. So, it's a real thing. So it's normal is what we want to say. It's normal to feel like, oh, there's no spark. But that's not the time to throw in the towel and say,
disconnect.
Well, I just fell out of love. No, it's time to re-spark. And there's things that you can do to re-spark and to keep that flame going, right? So we're going to talk about some of that today in our podcast. And, it's important to note too that those feelings, it doesn't mean that you don't love each other. Because I mentioned, falling out of love. Just because you don't have the ooey gooey feelings or, you do get to the place where you're just kind of passing each other, it doesn't mean that there's no love there. Right? And so we just have to now pick up those pieces, not stay there in that direction, going different directions. But we need to find the common ground. We need to connect.
Right. And why did you lose your spark for one another? Was it time that just got away from you because of the busyness of your life? Was it constant arguing and bickering with each other? Was it financial issues? Was it, because your kids or your in-laws or somebody is kind of moved in on you and your spouse's time, or moved in with you? If your kids are living in your bed with you, or if your in-laws are coming to live at your house, or you're having to live in their house, for a while, there's all these different antecedents to the cause, and that's what you want to look at as well, is look at the cause and then try to re-spark that flame that you have. Don't stay roommates very long. I mean, that's just one of those things that you do not want to do.
Because it leads down that slippery slope. If you're not engaging emotionally, having emotional intimacy with each other, you might be coming together physically, but if the emotional isn't there, you just are opening the door to be vulnerable to things happening. Yes. And opening the door for things in your marriage. And so we want to model, things too for our kids and what a marriage looks like in all the stages that we're in. And so, the Bible does have a lot to say about intimacy and a couple and meeting each other's needs. And so we're going to go there in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And you're going to have to go because I don't have my glasses. 1 Corinthians 7, 3 and 5. And the Bible talks about, husbands and wives, how it's important that we do connect physically, intimately.
All right. 1 Corinthians 7, 3 through 5 says this: Let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but her husband does, and likewise the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer and coming together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because you lack self-control. Wow.
So there's
a lot in there.
There's a lot in there.
Amen. We're done.
I mean, God knew that part of our lives is important and is not to be neglected. He said, don't neglect coming together and connecting. But it goes beyond the physical. You need to be connecting emotionally first. And so things to start out, just emotionally connecting. Daily check-ins, just 10 minutes. How many times do we check in with our phones, our social media, but we don't check in with each other?
Right.
More than just the logistics, but hey, how are you doing? Instead of how was your day, how's your heart today? How was the struggles today?
Right. And it's like, I liked what you said with the social media check-in, because you can just, how many of us just quickly want to glance at, whatever it is we're feeding our social media craze or hunger, or guys, our sports scores, But what about that with our wife? Even just a little touch, a little tap. Hey, how you doing? Mm-hmm. Or what's going on? Or I love you. Or any of those little check-ins are wonderful.
And acknowledging what's going on in the other's life. If you don't care, if you're not checking in with your spouse of what, it might be an important time in their life. You might not care, but it might be important to them. So, just to check in and how are those things going?
And I think that 10-minute check-in is great, either at the beginning of the day, end of the day. But I also think you should also check in and do a little more of a deep dive every 2 weeks or so. Because in 2 weeks, a lot of things can change in your life. And so, things just get into roles and into habits and into patterns. And you should really reevaluate that after a couple of weeks. Are we still good? Are we, what's really coming into your life? What's coming into my life? What just left my life, your life, our lives? So that not only daily 10-minute check-in, but probably doing a deeper dive every couple of weeks to month. Mm-hmm. Maybe every time you flip the calendar, oh yeah, a fresh month, a fresh start.
Yeah.
Something like that would be key for sure. Mm-hmm. Especially that emotional intimacy check-in.
Yep. And to express appreciation for things. You know, hey, I really appreciate it. That was a crazy day for me. I really appreciate that you made the dinner or that whatever it is. Show appreciation to your spouse, and that just goes huge. If just noticing that there's a lot on your spouse's plate, that they're managing a lot, just acknowledging that is huge.
And I think for us guys, the chivalry side of things is huge as well, whether that's opening doors for your family, for your spouse especially, the door to the car when you can, holding their hand in public to some degree. Like we usually do that walking into a Walmart. I don't know why we've done that, but or whatever. We're coming from the car to whatever building we're going into, and we connect our hands. And as we enter the building, because we have to get a cart or we're going somewhere, we disconnect there, but it's still a, hey, we're together. And so
Which
those kind
that
of things
leads
are
to
great.
the first, now transition to physical intimacy. Holding hands and those type of things are a good, segue into from that emotional safety, because you don't have to do those things, to the first steps of physical intimacy, of just saying, hey, I'm here, just the touching, hugging, a kiss, hello and goodbye. Those are all little things that lead into the bigger things.
Right. For sure. And so you don't have to be too quick about it either. I think, I know when you rush out of the door for the morning, you're grabbing your coffee, your lunch, and you kiss just a little peck on the cheek, those are fine, but every once in a while, a little bit extra is always appreciated.
You don't think 20 seconds, that doesn't seem very long, but
it can be.
If you go 20 seconds, I mean, that gets the heart pumping.
Yeah, it's the heart pumping. It feels a little weird. I mean, it's like, how long are we going to hold this whole but that's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, mix it up, and that's okay, for sure.
Yeah. The next thing when it comes to physical intimacy, schedule it. Especially if you have busy schedules. It's okay to sit down with your calendar and to say, okay, what works for you? Because maybe you have a big week and, I know at the end of so-and-so day, I'm going to be exhausted. So I'm letting you know right now, it's off the table, right? But schedule it in. And that way, ladies, we need that prep just in our mind to be ready
our guys,
all
we
day.
do. We
and
need
guys
it too. Or prep that it's not going to happen.
Right.
The other way. For sure.
So it's okay to schedule.
Yes.
And that's a good conversation then to have of what's going to help both of you. What do you need? Each of you need.
Right. And when you then schedule it, then you can start that process a lot earlier of that extra touching, the extra hand holdings, the little extra kisses, flirting, those kind of things. That makes it more fun and date-like, even if you have 3-4 kids and juggling everything, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, that is very okay to go ahead and schedule it. And then like you've said earlier, if this is going to be an exhausting day, acknowledge it and let the other one know this isn't going to probably work. I always knew, you used to be a music teacher. There was the week of the concert week was a huge one. And, I just, the first couple of years, I would be like, well, this ain't happening. And I would get very frustrated, but it was a selfish frustration. And I didn't look at it from your point of view and how busy, and maybe not even physically busy at the beginning of that week, but mentally busy. You were drained. And so I learned it's slower than I probably should have. Then let's just process this a little bit differently than I would a normal week. And then helping put things away, helping cut things out. Even though I hated to do those things, it was certainly a nice boost for you,
Hmm.
and it helped us bring things back around afterwards,
Right.
for
There's
sure.
no then resentment, if it's
Right.
planned and you kind of know that that's going to happen. Um, and that's the other thing. Be honest with each other. Address those things that um, the obstacles of physical intimacy. Maybe you have fatigue. Maybe you have a bad body image and it is preventing you from really being intimate with your spouse. Talk about those things. And
Hmm.
that's hard to talk about, especially if you have a bad body image. But, to say, hey, you know, I don't like you touching there because I have this. And so then you can work through it
Yeah,
together.
when you, I feel kind
Yeah.
of moments.
And so help the other, coach each other because your spouse doesn't know.
Right. Don't assume that they know either.
Yeah, don't assume. And so you have to coach each other. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is how I feel because,
Yeah.
maybe you had a traumatic thing happen in your life um, that causes that, hard to be intimate as
Hmm.
well. And so to address those things together, if you need to seek a counselor with those things, that might be something you need to do as well. If it's a deep thing that
Right.
you just can't get over.
For sure. And again, when especially if you schedule things like a date night or those intimate moments, make sure you do that.
Hmm.
I mean, stick to your plans. Now I know there's those moments that you can't, but make sure you stick to it. Because if you don't, again, then doubt and resentment and worry, all these other things come in. And again, you're trying to protect your relationship with your spouse, which is the most important one out of them all.
Hmm.
More important than your one with your siblings or your buddies or your girlfriends, those kind of things. So again, that protect those moments for sure, um,
Hmm.
and that's important, I think.
Yeah. Set boundaries for your technology. I think technology just steals a
It's
lot, and we're
sucking a
actually
lot of
going to
us.
address this in the next week. But it really does deprive our lives of just living.
Hmm.
It really sucks the life out of, everything. Um, and so just be cognizant of how much you're spending on your phone. If you're sitting there together at the end of the day and just scrolling mindlessly,
Hmm.
that could be some time that you could connect, you know,
Right.
rub my feet.
Yeah, it happens.
You're good at that.
That's right. It happens. But
Yeah.
yes, yeah, you don't want to just to let the phone be your babysitter or
Well,
your go-to, your triggers.
and don't think that connection is just going to happen. You have to nurture these times and um, set up for success,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that's right. Have to set yourself up for success. And another one is sometimes harder if you're on opposite schedules, but go to bed at the same time. You know, we don't believe in really TVs or technologies in the bedroom, but at the same time, we do have a TV in our room because sometimes we're on different patterns, but we still want to go to bed at the same time. And that's very important. And usually then the TV gets turned off pretty quickly. But if there's a show you're trying to watch towards the end or whatever, just find out what works for you, but try to go to bed at the same time. I think that's so important. I know there's these late night workers that really like to, their prime time is from midnight to 3 or something. Um,
But I've heard those couples a lot of times they will go to bed together
right,
and then the one will wait until the one falls asleep or whatever and then they'll get up and do whatever they're going to finish working
right.
or so I guess whatever you do. I'm gone by that time, so I don't know how they do it, but
Right.
for us times that we have to schedule, especially when it gets really busy. And I think everybody gets busy around the holiday season. The middle of winter, you have sports, you have the kids' activities, you have the list goes on and on and on. And in our home, you start coaching.
Yeah.
You're a basketball coach. And so
for over 20 years, we've been in this cycle.
So along with being a pastor and having the church and everything, you're a coach, and now this year a teacher. And so we know that season is coming. And so we're already preparing. Okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is maybe things that we need to set in place, right? But since we know it's going to be your attention is somewhere else, you have always been really good at the end of the season, making sure we reconnect.
Right.
And so we will, you'll get a night away somewhere, or just a day away, or a couple days to reconnect and to say, hey, I appreciate all that you gave up for me, all the nights at home by yourself.
Right.
And I think those are really important, that when you do have a season of really crazy, that you find the time to reconnect.
Right, and you might have a job that's not a coaching job like mine that just lasts for 3 months, but you might be a truck driver who's gone on the road for 2 weeks at a time or a week at a time, or you're into construction and you work 15-hour days, 4 days a week or whatever. At the end of those moments, you should always try to reconnect somehow and thank each other for picking up the slack for each other. I don't think that's done enough in marriages. It's just assumed and expected, but it shouldn't be.
Right.
And again, it's that reconnection, that intimate verbal, I guess is what I should say with that. For sure is important.
Yep.
So yeah, I think you have some homework to do out there. That 10-minute check-ins would be great. That 2-week deep dive into how it went for the last 2 weeks, or you think it's going to go in the next 2 weeks, or however that might look for you and your spouse, I think is important.
I think the bottom line is great intimacy takes some planning. It doesn't just happen. And great physical intimacy starts with great emotional intimacy and feeling connected, feeling heard, and so
keeping the spark.
Been
talking about.
Yep, keep that spark alive, and find ways, that speak your spouse's love language there. So to build that intimacy. So, and also we have again that marriage builders. We keep telling you, but we have a whole section on physical intimacy that we talk about and how to do some of these things. We really go step by step. So, and that would be something good even for individually in your marriage. If you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, this would be great if my husband would hear this, or this would be great if my wife would hear this. It'd be good even to do by yourself.
And bring those nuggets
to
into
the marriage,
the conversation that you have.
Yep. So you don't have to wait till your spouse is ready. You can jump into it together.
Right. Amen. So just go to our Schaffer Ministries and look at marriage builders, and they'll take you from there to get you plugged in.
That's for sure. All right. Well, as we begin our November in thankfulness, we are thankful for you all and for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe and do all those things to help us get this podcast out. We would appreciate it. So,
amen. Well, always remember to bring hope home to your life today.
If you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, give us a 5-star rating and drop a review. If you're listening on Spotify, give us a follow. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. See you next week.